Hey, I want to talk to you about communication. And communication is the A and B and then back to A communication cycle that you go through with anybody that is in your life, whether it's a text message or a communication, or a phone call or a conversation. So, communication goes from one person where data is sent from one person to somebody else. That somebody else gets the data, processes it, and then sends a communication back to A and completes the cycle of communication. So communication is data being traded back and forth between two people. And you'd be amazed to realize how many people don't understand what communication is and how communication works. We live in a culture, a block happy culture, where this day and age, especially the younger generations, they don't have the common decency and respect to give out decent communications. And I understand this because whenever I'm dating younger women or dating older women, I can clearly see the difference. Whenever I'm doing business with a younger person, interacting with a younger person, interacting with an older person, I can clearly see the difference in communication. So the cycle of a communication has to do with information being traded from one person to another, and then that process, the information processed and sent back to somebody else. So when you're communicating with somebody, it's decent for you if, let's just say, somebody sent you a message that didn't even require a response necessarily. You could respond to that person in text and say acknowledged. You could respond to that person in email and say message received, right? So there's this A and B and then back to A. So somebody communicates with you, you receive the communication, you process it, you handle it, and then you send a communication back to that person, updating them on what has taken place so that they get a verification that you've received their communication and have taken action of whatever necessity is required. So whenever you're communicating with people, it's important that there's an A and B, a back and forth, right? If you've ever been ghosted, if you ever had somebody just completely drop off the face of the planet, you know how frustrating this is, and you might have ghosted somebody yourself. I know I'm guilty of it, where I wasn't careful with an interaction. I ended up just not speaking to somebody again and not responding to them, sometimes by accident, sometimes clearly intentionally. So we all do that to others. And I think that communication is something to where it's a decency to give somebody a communication back. If you go out on a date with somebody and you decide that you don't want to date that person any longer, you don't want to see them again, there's red flags, whatever the case, it's decent of you to respond to that person and say, hey, I liked you or I respect you or I didn't like you right? You got to give them something back because that's common decency, right? You don't go out on a date with somebody, decide that you don't like them, and then never talk to them again. You don't behave that way as a human. That's not decent. And I think that all of us could use a lesson on communication, right? How important communication is. One of the valuable things about this is the golden law, the golden rule. Do unto others as you want done unto you. And there is this karmic situation where everything that you put out comes back to you in a circle, right? You cut somebody off in traffic, chances are you're going to get cut off in traffic down the road, right? Now, I'm not saying that we live in an absolute karmic universe where everything that you sow, you get back instantly in the same way that you sowed it, because there is grace, there is forgiveness, there are people in this world that you can do wrong and they will forgive you and not retaliate, right? So karma is important because you do reap what you sow. We don't live in a perfect universe, but I do believe that every weight is measured and balanced accurately. So that's how I move through life, where I don't want to create an experience for somebody else that I myself couldn't also experience very, peacefully. So that is a different definition of the golden rule. The golden rule is do unto others as you want done unto you, right? Well, a second version of that, an expanded version of that, is only create for others what you yourself would be willing to experience. And if you would not be willing to willingly experience that thing, don't do it to other people, right? So that is the second version of the golden rule. Don't do unto others what you yourself wouldn't appreciate being done unto you. So when it comes to communication, guys, it's really important. And, owning a couple sales companies, we own Multigen Wellness, we own Multigen Online Marketing, we own Majestic Lighting Design, and we've been doing sales. I've been doing sales for 20 something years. And I can tell the highly mature individuals from the ones that don't, just simply how they handle a sales call. For example, we go out and we give a consult to a customer for outdoor lighting. We leave their house, we try to follow up with them a week later, 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later, and they're not responding to our texts, they're not responding to our emails, they're not responding to our calls. Eventually, that person will either disappear or they'll get angry. And I've had this. I've literally had clients where we went out to give quotes to, and then we followed up with them and followed up with them and followed up with them, and they ghosted us. Whereas eventually they'll pick up the phone and be like, "Stop fucking calling me." And I'm like, "Okay, well, tell you what, you should have responded to us. If you didn't want to be harassed, you should have responded to us with common decency and told us that you hired another company or you weren't interested." You don't ghost people. You don't go entertain somebody and then not give them something back. So communication is decency. It's being decent to another human being. There's patients where we went to sign them up for hormone therapy through Multigen Wellness, and they, for whatever reason, didn't sign up or weren't interested, or went with somebody else. We don't know. But then we try to call them back. We try to call them back and get them into communication, and they would ghost us. So it's rampant in our society. And I'm creating this message because anybody who watches this, I want you to be able to master communication. If you want to be successful in life, if you want to be successful in this life, communication is one of those things that you have to master. Communication is a highly, highly important skill that very few people have actually mastered. Communication, a good communicator because when you're interacting with them in life, it's pleasant all the time. Even if it's like, I was dating this woman one time, and for whatever reason, she decided that she didn't want to date me anymore. And she literally called me, told me how amazing I was, and then explained why she didn't want to date me anymore. And we became friends. Like, we literally became friends. So it's never a situation for you to just ghost somebody. It's very, very rare where ghosting somebody without a final communication, without a closing of the cycle, is actually okay and relevant. So we're dealing here with ethics and integrity. So when you're interacting with somebody in life, a friend, a potential customer, potential date, anybody, potential business partner, communication has to do with ethics and integrity. So just simply sending somebody a message saying acknowledged, right? That's it. Just sending one text or one email back that says acknowledged, received. I have received this, thank you. Any kind of A to B, B to A back is decent, right? You're giving somebody the decency of what communication you would prefer back if you were the one on the other end of the line. So communication is extremely powerful. Because when you're communicating with somebody, if you're responsive, if you respond in a decent time, you communicate with clarity, you use specific words, and you're very careful to ensure that the data that you need received is received, and then you follow up with that person to make sure that they received your communication, that person on the other end of the line is going to have a really good feeling about you, and they're going to say, wow, that guy, he knows how to communicate. Right? So communication is important, and it's something for you guys to learn to master and apply in your life. Communication and having good A, B, B, A, back and forth comm cycles can change your life overnight simply by instituting, principles. Okay. The principle is when somebody texts me, I'm going to text them back immediately. I'm not going to let text go 3, 4, 5 days any longer. The moment that somebody hits you with a comm, you hit them right back. Whether it's a text, it's an email, or a phone call, immediately get back to that person. Don't let it sit there. Don't let a text sit there for 3 to 4 days. Don't let phone calls sit there for 3 to 4 days. When the moment that you get something, immediately handle it. That's the best way to handle communication, is handle it in real time, the moment that it happens, so that the person on the receiving end understands that you appreciate them, right? All right, guys, thank you.